Base where there's a problem, or what's your general understanding?
Well, as far as the alien Bible, I don't know what you're really talking about. Some of the briefings that I read dealt with some of that information about, it's being the product of a genetic modification.
Right.
But that's about all. That's about all that I know. The repercussions, the big story, all that. All that I really have no idea about.
Well, I meant, like you mentioned the date when they were supposed to return. Is something supposed to happen when they return?
I have no idea.
Okay.
It was just a date, and it was a number that made no sense to me. It was a 601 or 30 something. Obviously in a different numerical system.
And so, other than having created us and then the genetic upgrades, that's it as far as that's
supposedly, if that information is correct, yeah.
I'm interested in a little bit more about the physics of the power generation from the development of the antimatter to the gravity A wave and the amplification and that process of the generation of that and being able to fold space. Can you repeat the question, please?
That's a pretty lengthy explanation.
In other words, the relationship between the development of antimatter and the gravitational force field.
Well, I can give you, I guess, a brief overview of essentially how that works. If you want an in-depth description of that, you can give me your address and I can send you a paper on it. Essentially, what the reactor does is provide electrical power and the base gravity wave to amplify, and it does that by interacting matter and antimatter, essentially. The way it does that is injecting an accelerated proton into a piece of 115 that spontaneously generates antihydrogen, essentially. That's reacted in a small area. It's a compressed gas, probably a compressed atmospheric gas, and the antimatter reacting with matter produces the energy, mainly heat energy, and that is converted into electrical energy by a thermionic generator that appeared to be 100% efficient, which is a difficult concept to believe anyway. Also, the reactor has two functions. That's one of them. The other function is it provides the basic gravity wave that's amplified, and that appears at the upper sphere of the amplifier itself, and that's tapped off with a waveguide similar to microwaves, and is amplified and focused, essentially.
So how is the electrical energy related to the amplification of the gravitational A wave energy?
The electrical energy is transmitted essentially without wires, and I related it to almost a Tesla setup. It seemed like each subcomponent on the craft was attuned to the frequency that the reactor was operating at. So essentially the amplifiers themselves receive the electrical energy like a Tesla coil transmits power to a fluorescent tube. What was the rest of the question?
Yeah, in other words, what is the relationship between, I think you basically answered it.
Yeah, that's how the amplifiers receive the power, and through the waveguide they receive the basic wave. It's very, very similar to a microwave amplifier. And, for more technical description, I can send you drawings or things along those lines, but that's basically how it works.
I understand you took some 115 home with you to do some testing on your own.
I obtained it, yeah.
Did you document any of your testing?
Yeah.
You did?
Yeah, the video, mostly videotape and things like that.
John said it was stolen from you later. Last night he said...
They stole it back.
Stole it back, he said?
Well, there's another level to that, but like I said, right now it's in private hands.
Okay.
Element 115, John said last night that a wedge that's about 2 inches in length will run the ship up to 30 years. How does that go in light years? How long would that be?
Well, it really depends on the energy level. The more energy you expend, the greater consumption of fuel, just like in any modern machine. So it really all depends on the amount of energy you request out of it.
What is
With Dr. Keller's relationship to S4, do you think he might be working on antimatter weaponry?
I don't know, but he was certainly, I forgot what his exact title was. He was chief consultant or something along those lines. And as far as antimatter weaponry, I don't think anyone was involved in that. There was certainly some beam weapon work, and Teller's been involved with that. I think his last project at Livermore, Los Alamos was, I think he called it Super Excalibur, and that was essentially a nuclear bomb detonated in orbit and fiber optic light guides that directed X-rays to incoming warheads. And that's his pet project. He loves that thing, so I don't think he'd jump to antimatter weapons. All the way in the back there.
On your sports tunnel that you worked on, what do you think was on level 3, and where were the bathrooms?
I don't know if anything was on level. Well, I don't know if there were any bathrooms on level 3. I can only guess, and I would imagine that there was some sort of navigational equipment or their version of a computer or something along those lines, because I saw nothing else that controlled the amplifiers, the directions they pointed at.
Bob, how do you foresee that mankind can develop this type of machine?
I really don't. Without access to certain materials. Or maybe new manufacturing techniques that can produce those. But until those problems are solved, the fact that we even know how to deal with it or even duplicate it, is pretty useless.
How many other materials might be necessary besides 115 that you know of that were contained on the ship?
That might be it. The rest of it might be just essentially polishing up manufacturing techniques, making things smaller. Just general increase in technology, getting a small accelerator running at a higher energy level. I don't know about the metallurgy aspect of the craft. I don't think any exotic metals are necessary, though they may be employed. I imagine you could make a craft out of aluminum if necessary, but what part that plays, I don't know.
Is there any significance to the saucer shape, the geometry, having to do with any resonance or anything of that nature?
Not any resonance, but it's important most of the edges on the craft are rounded, because a high voltage field does appear at most of the craft, except for the last upper bump. There's a little ring before that. Now I'm only talking about one craft, so I don't know about the rest, but there's a small ring before that, a darker black one, and that's an insulator ring, and that's the only place above that upper section, the third level, is where high voltage does not appear.
Did any technology that came from the aliens resemble anything that we can do today? Have we advanced to any degree that they are?
Well, there are some basic things. The fact that they're using a little accelerator, a little bit smaller, we have things like that, if that's what you're getting at.
Anything really advanced?
Well, as far as controlling gravity waves.
Yeah, other than the fact of just the way the craft operates, by manipulating gravity, that's about it, really.
Well, I wanted to ask you, talking about metallurgy, what you observed in terms of the structure, the skin of it, the thickness, because there were reports from Roswell and otherwhere that there was a very thin type of metal skin that was really undamageable and so on. What was this construction of it like?
Well, I called it metal, and I really can't say that's what it was. I called it metal because I slid my hand across it, and it was cold, and it was lustrous. So. Did
you notice any place like where, on an edge or something where it may have been a lot thinner than your standard metals that are aluminum that's used in aircraft?
It's hard from the outside. You can't tell.
No,
when you walk in, the way the archways are inside, they're probably about 4 inches thick anyway. So you really can't tell how thin the skin is itself, or if it's exotic or exotic.
Yes, more on this element 115 and your contention that it couldn't be made here on Earth. What if you found the right bombardment speed, the right target shape, and the right containment?
Well, I imagine with enough time you can make a small amount of it. I mean, my analogy is look at look at how long it takes to make gold in an accelerator from bismuth or something like that.
But that may just be a technology that hasn't advanced far enough yet to do that.
Right, but the bottom line is you have to sit there and plug in protons and neutrons, for that matter, into an existing atom, and you have to do it, essentially on an individual basis, and they're not all going to catch on. Some are going to.
But how do you think they got their first piece of it? If it was in a dead star, how going from?
I think it was naturally occurring somewhere
on their planet.
Just because it's stable, yeah, probably so. That's just a guess on my part, but if that technology was harnessed quick enough, chances are they didn't have, when they came here, our levels of technology were probably fairly new to them. They probably never even considered an internal combustion engine, or for that matter, when they came flying into the atmosphere and saw little cigar-shaped things with fire coming out the back, they probably couldn't conceive of how they were powered. So it was, it just all depends how, what materials, raw materials you have. But, that's just an opinion that was a naturally occurring element.
Are you aware of any long-distance flight tests that have been done on any of the discs?
As of the time that I was there, I was told that they really didn't take them any great distance at all, other than right outside the...
Have you heard the rumor of the pilots that were killed by flying into the atmosphere?
No.
If we had a working agreement with the aliens at one time, why didn't they give us a user's manual for these ships? Why have we had to work so hard back engineering them?
I haven't the slightest idea.
Have they assisted us at all with any of the technology and learning it?
I really don't know. It almost seems like there had to have been some assistance or some information found, but who knows?
Your information didn't indicate that. Though.
No.
Yeah, with such tight security around there, supposedly only 500 pounds of this material, how is it somebody can get some of it out of there?
Because not some of the material is that they have there is essentially raw. The material it has to be machined into discs. These discs have to be stacked up and then cut into a cone shape and then sliced along the long axis of it. That work is done at Los Alamos. I'm not exactly sure Los Alamos knows what they're doing. Apparently they think that they're developing the little coins they're working on is some new type of armor. And having worked at Los Alamos and know people around that area, that's how I obtained some of them.
Thank you. Can you say anything about Project Looking Glass and the relationship between gravity and time?
Well, gravity and time are almost essentially the same thing. And Looking Glass dealt with using gravity essentially to distort time, and as I've said before, I really know very little about that, but they were only talking about milliseconds or even less microseconds of time distortion. They're not like looking back in time to see who killed Kennedy or something.
The craft that are you talking about, the scout craft, is that the one that's like the Adamski picture with the 3 domes underneath? And if it's not,
I'm not exactly sure of the Adamski
okay,
picture.
it's the saucer shape that has.
This is the one that looks like one of the Meyer craft.
Right.
Did you see any others than that one, or is there 9 out there?
Yeah, I saw 9 total, but that's the only one I got close enough to.
Did you see the one with the 3 domes underneath that, 3 balls underneath that has the central housing underneath?
No.
And then the second question was, did anybody give you any indication as to who was driving or any information on that?
I assume that it was humans that were violating the craft, though it could have been remote control, but at the one test flight that I saw on the ground, they were in radio communication with someone, and I assumed it was someone in the craft. I mentioned it's possible that it could have been a remote observer somewhere, but I just assumed that the seats were retrofitted, or they were sitting on the floor for that matter.
Are you familiar with, I have a couple aspects to the question. Are you familiar with Howard Menger's Electrocraft and Otis Carr's saucer design, and how are their devices, how do they generate their gravity fields compared with what you've described? And lastly, can you speculate how why the commercialization of some of these crafts hasn't been possible with so many different patents applied for these kinds of design craft?
Because they don't work.
Are there any G forces encountered
No.
by the pilots inside the craft?
I don't know.
No.
From your interviews, you seem to feel that the Area 51 or the S4 test site was kind of slipshod in how it does its research. It really doesn't have the facilities there to actually do the research correctly. And also, I'm wondering, could you comment about that? And also, I'm wondering what you could tell us about the other types of ships you saw there that you felt were alien in origin.
Well, as far as the research at S4, that was kind of slipshod. Just because mainly it was being done from a military point of view. If anything, it was a weapons development program, and they were more concerned about with duplicating the technology, not really duplicating the technology, duplicating the hardware, as opposed to back engineering the technology to find out how these theories actually work and what's going on with them. And so they really weren't taking the scientific approach, and that was causing some dissension. I don't remember the second part of the question.
Just what other types of ships did you see that might have been alien in origin?
I only saw them, and they varied in shape, but I was told they had the same identical power and propulsion system, and that's the extent of my knowledge on that.
What about shape?
They varied completely in shape.
Yeah, you had the military out there supposedly working with the aliens. Did you ever get an inference from them that it was a positive or a negative situation? In other words, when they brought up, when they were talking about the aliens or whatever, was it a positive or a negative type slant on the...
Well, they really didn't talk about the aliens. The only time I ever heard anybody mention anything about an alien, someone, and I'm just assuming that, someone called it, or called the thing, a gourd. And that was it. I heard it in the middle of a conversation, and they stopped talking when I got up to them, so that was the thing.
Just this question to the interior of the sports model. I know you have made reference to the power source in the center of the craft, and there were small seats that were low to the ground. How about consoles or displays or any kind of instrumentation?
Nothing along those lines, but what I call the console, there are 3 seats. If you look at the bottom level, there's 3 amplifiers in a triad formation. Directly above each one is something I call a console, and I think that's a secondary part to the amplifier. And an analogy to that would be the actual amplifier, and the thing hanging underneath would kind of be a speaker if you're talking on audio terms. So.
Is there any kind of control or lights or indicators?
No.
No on switch?
Not that I could find.
Did it seem like there was any place or even a need for a life support of any kind on these?
Not that it was obvious to me.
Two questions. How do they navigate and how do we converse with them?
I haven't the slightest idea how they navigate. Like I said, I think if that, whatever controls the configuration of the amplifier is the focusing, which is basically their navigation, is most probably on the upper level of the craft that I didn't get to look at. And as far as the conversation between them, your guess is as good as mine.
Was the local means of propulsion the same as this across great space differences? What was the local means of propulsion?
The local means of propulsion is essentially them balancing on an out-of-phase gravity wave. And it's not as stable as you would think. When the craft took off, it wobbled to some degree. It's, a modern-day Hawker Harrier or something along those lines, a vertical takeoff craft, is much more stable than them in the Omicron configuration, which is that mode of travel. The Delta configuration is where they use the 3 amplifiers. And those are the only 2 methods I know about for moving the craft.
Can one pilot, as far as you know, pilot this craft, or does it take 3, or do you know anything about that?
I don't know. Oh, and back in the red?
Yeah.
You're both in the red.
Delta 15, was that stable? In other words, does it give off the radiation, or can you hold it?
No, it's stable.
Stable, so you hold it right in your hand?
Yeah, theoretically, elements should reach a stability around anywhere from 113 to 116, somewhere in there, and apparently that's true. And again, they should reach a stability somewhere up around 220 some odd. But whether those elements will ever be synthesized or found naturally. Yeah, it's unusually heavy. Yeah.
I want to know what you think of monuments in Mars, and do you think we have bases also?
Do I think we have bases? No. The monuments of Mars are interesting. That's about the most I can say. They're suspicious, and I really don't know until there's more information. I've seen pictures of them and things along those lines, but the most recent Mars probe is taking low-altitude photographs of those, so I guess everyone will know in about a year. Indirectly, yeah.
What about your perception of time and length, width, and height? Is it the same aboard the craft as off of it? Why do you want aboard compared to when you were off of it?
Well, you went aboard it or off of it. Well, as long as you're on the craft, everything seems completely normal to you. Time flows at a normal rate, and if you're off the craft and you're comparing the time of someone in the craft, someone off the craft, there'll be a definite difference there. Anything where gravity's involved, even the shuttle astronauts, they'll come back just because of the difference in gravity. When they come back, there'll be a slight difference in time.
Did you learn of any other well-known civilian scientists who are involved in this?
Yes, not involved in this, but involved in the gravity work. And he's at Los Alamos, and we've had a little bit of contact.
You name names?
I'd rather not, just because so far no one's bothering him, and I'm sure he wants to keep it that way.
You said that the scene on the craft would become transparent. You said the wall inside the craft would become transparent.
Only one place, yeah.
Only one, so the whole craft can become transparent?
No, there's only one place where the seats faced, and it, there again, I said that's advanced technology, but it's not that advanced because, we have something along the lines of that liquid crystal that we could, make transparent and also use as, a display of sorts. So that's, but this was metallic, and we haven't anything along the lines of the toughness of metal that you could drill into that can become transparent.
What was the time period when the walls became transparent and the salts disappeared?
Probably about 30 seconds or so.
Yeah, two related questions. Are you aware of any instances where the inside of an alien craft was much larger than its apparent outside?
No, I've heard stories like that, though, but I haven't.
If I can just follow it up.
The strong force which you've identified with gravity A, I know there's been some recent theories that propose actually an 11-dimensional universe with 7 of them rolled up.
I'm not buying that.
Does it operate on any principle related to that?
Yeah, my main problem with that, and Stephen Hawking for that matter, is that once you start creating other dimensions, it's like an excuse. I mean, in particle physics, they do that too. When they can't figure out something, they say, well, we don't know what gravity is. Well, it's caused by the graviton. Yeah, they make up particles like that. And you can do that with dimensions too. Well, where'd it go? I went into another dimension. Yeah, it's like an excuse. The bottom line is, as everyone has said, every physicist has said, the answer to everything is always simple. And there's not an 11-dimensional universe. It does. First of all, there doesn't need to be, because all this technology works, one-dimensional, essentially a 4-dimensional universe, and there's no need for it.
Yes, I have questions, please. You said in your videotape that you do work from Las Vegas to Groom Lake, is that right?
Yeah.
How did you get from Groom Lake down?
In a bus.
The facility on the other side of Groom Lake, on the east side of Groom Lake, are you familiar with that?
On the east side of Groom Lake. Across the lake?
Yes.
No, I've never been over there.
Did you get into the work that was done on the west side of Groom Lake?
No.
Bob, getting back to his question about if there is any difference between being on the inside of a craft while it's under power versus being on the outside of a craft, of course, you wouldn't have experienced that because you were never on the craft when it was powered, right? Under power.
Well, by the fact that the screen became transparent and other things were operational, I can assume that there was some power generated. So
I see.
So,
okay. Huh.
Bob, how long were you a part of the S4 project, and how key of a person were you on the science team to study these vehicles?
I was probably there only 6 months, 4 months, something like that. It's hard to remember. And as far as a key person, I'm sure I was the last rung on the ladder. Though, because no one has really gotten anywhere, you know, they were looking to me for fresh ideas, which I really didn't have anything because I didn't know what, what really was going on or where they had been. So it was a very disorganized group, and that's really all I can relay. I don't know how else to describe it.
It was frustrating in that regard.
Very frustrating.
Element 115, does it have emission lines?
Does it have emission lines?
Spectral.
Well, I imagine it does. Every other element does, yeah.
That you know of?
Well, no, I haven't seen, any spectrographic analysis on it, or, well, actually, they did do it. I don't know if I saw it, though. I saw a neutron bombardment test and density measurements and things like that, but I'm sure they carried out that test on it, but I wouldn't be able to identify the lines, no.
You're not aware of the results?
They probably showed them to me, but I can't, for the life of me, remember after 4 years.
It's actually occurring what you expect to see in a star?
Possibly in heavier stars or in planets that surround a larger star system. And in fact, some people brought up that well, that's ridiculous because all the elements that we know of are found on Earth, and that's not true. I think it's technium or something along those lines is not found on Earth, and it's on the periodic chart, so it's not that.
Something is in the sky.
What?
Hello, Dad.
And Doug, and they mapped it out in the south of France. They looked back and looked, and it has to fall where the natural belt of uranium is there. And I was wondering if you had anything that would lead you from what you saw with that propulsion system to think that aliens may have come here at one time to do that.
I don't know. I mean, no matter what, uranium is certainly a valuable element.
Okay.
I don't know.
Did you get to see any aliens at all?
No.
Back when you were talking about low-level flight, you were talking about a wobble.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever seen the Billy Meyer movies? Something similar to that?
The Billy Meyer movies.
Of the disc wobbling? Films. Just quite a few films of discs.
I don't think I've ever seen any motion.
Yeah, he's got some that fly around a tree, and they've got
some... Oh, wait, I did see that. Yeah, I did see that.
And then there's some other hovering ones where they wobble.
What's strange about the Billy Meyer photographs, that the discs, that one of the ones he took a picture of, looks exactly like the one that I looked on, but I'm certainly not an expert in the field, but some of those look unbelievably fake. And I can't, especially the thing with it flying around the tree, I mean, boy, it looks like it's hanging from a string. But, but why would he do that if he had some authentic pictures? And I don't know. I have mixed feelings about that.
How do you feel about, or do you have an opinion of this conflict that allegedly happened between Grays and the Delta Force in, what was it, 89 or whatever? Have you heard anything about that?
I really don't have an opinion. I just, repeat it.
You think it really took place?
Boy, I don't know.
Any weapons on these ships?
Yeah, apparently there's one, but I was involved in the project that dealt with it.
And what's your next video going to cover?
Well, it's really not a next video. There's the video that I made is being redone by another company only because they liked it so much, and they're just redoing the graphics and making it a little more technical, and I'm just serving as a technical advisor on it. But for the most part, it's 60 to 70% of it's the identical thing. They just wanted to do it because these particular group of guys involved. I think the company's called DreamQuest, involved in special effects. Were really into the UFO thing, and they wanted to do it with modern day stuff instead of, knit stockings and things like that. Well, that's certainly possible. I don't have any information on that, but just by the EMP generated, by the systems on the craft, that makes perfect sense to me.
I was going to ask you, what type of weapon do they have?
It's some sort of directed energy weapon, and I think it's a...
like a laser beam?
Well, no, a particle weapon, probably a neutron.
How many levels does that S4 have? Do you know? Just one, or just below ground, or?
There might be two, but I know there's one because obviously I was on one. But I can't actually remember if there was any direct mention from there of there being a lower level. But I really wasn't allowed to roam freely around the whole place, so I don't know. I really don't know.
Could you tell us about your education? That's a couple of different concerning things I might hear from you.
That varies widely. As far as electronic technology, my degree there is from Caltech, and physics is from MIT.
When did you graduate?
Did you go to Pierce College?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, this is
Where did you hear that?
a friend said something that, somebody I don't even know. I just thought, well, it's something I want to ask because it cleared it to my mind.
Yeah, I went to Pierce and Northridge, and then I'm terrible at dates. I don't remember what date I was at Pierce. Probably like in '76 or something. I was at Pierce, and then '77 or '8. I went to Northridge just for a short time for some classes, and I was at Caltech, and then MIT after that.
Yeah, some critics have suggested that there is not a Department of Naval Intelligence as shown on your IRS record. I wonder if you could address that.
Yeah, I've heard people say that before, but the bottom line is if you, and I've let other people check into that. Bob Exler is a guy that managed to trace that down through the IRS, and if you write the zip code number on the bottom of it, or NC-101 or something like that, or NC something, anyway, it gets to somewhere in the Navy. As far as if there's a department of there, I don't know, but that's the W-2 that I got sent. So.
Well, that same person was saying though that the zip code that was on there was someone that was in reserve, unused in Washington, some zip code.
That was unused?
Yeah.
Well, no, he had correspondence with someone in the Navy through that address.
I'm not talking about Bob Exler. I'm talking about Bill Moore.
Oh, Bill Moore.
Yeah.
I don't know. Bill Moore.
I know he's an enigma himself.
Yeah,
I'm just saying that was his point.
He disputes everything I say. He said, "Well, there's two different types on here, and this and that." I said, "Well, I don't know." So that's basically what I get sent, and I've seen enough information to where that zip code works, and that's all the information I have. I really haven't pursued it myself.
But maybe clarify for them why you think this is a legitimate document because of the certain elements of it that are correct.
Oh, because of the amount of money.
Right.
Yeah, no one would know the amount of money except me.
And
The
that was
people
correct.
that, so that's all the information I've got on it.
I have two questions. They're not related to each other, but one is, are they silent or noiseless? And B, who signed your paychecks?
As far as are they silent or noiseless, there's a slight hiss before they take off, and up to a certain altitude, and that sounds like a high voltage hiss of sorts. That's all the sounds that I've heard. I've heard lots of reports about weird flying saucer type sounds, but I've never encountered that. Who signed my paycheck? There was a signature on it, but I don't know whose it was. It never even, at the time that I cashed the paycheck, it never even concerned me tracing anything down.
So there wasn't a company name up in the corner like most paychecks?
Well, when I worked for the federal government years ago, all you'd get is a green Treasury check. There would be no other papers with it or anything from the Department of Treasury.
No, this said the Department of Naval Intelligence on it.
On the check?
Yeah, on the check.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bob, when a craft like that comes into our atmosphere, would you expect a loud report that might be explained?
Well, it's solely dependent on the velocity that it enters. So if you're dealing with something that manipulates gravity and doesn't have to slingshot into the earth, you could come in at a low speed, not heat up, not really encounter
But it's
any.
velocity dependent, is that so?
Right. Well, yeah, if you're traveling at supersonic, then you get a report. If you're not, you don't. It's pretty straightforward.
When you were at S4, to your knowledge, what was the approximate percentage of civilian versus military personnel, and in what kind of job categories?
The civilian personnel were scientific in nature, and the military personnel were only security. And as far as the percentage, it was a small percentage of scientific to military personnel.
Are there any secretaries?
I'm sure there were offices all over the place, but when I came into the facility, I was essentially escorted right to where I work and worked there, other than the few amount of times that I got to walk into the hangar and under an escort too, and when I left it was the same. So like I said, there might be offices, there might be bunkers in there, there might be underground levels, there might be an alien nest in there. I have no idea. Excuse me?
How did you eat? How did you eat?
The only place I ever ate was at Area 51. So if there was a cafeteria there, I never got to eat in it.
You come and go with other people?
I usually came with Dennis Mariani, who was my supervisor. Now, I wasn't on a full-time swing, essentially. I flew in usually between 4 and 5 o'clock at night and left by 11. So I was only there for a short time each day.
Bob, aboard the bus from Groom Lake to Papoose, how many people were boarding with you?
Very few.
More than yourself.
It's me and Dennis, and usually, actually not usually, occasionally one other person.
How about Barry?
I don't think I ever saw Barry on the bus.
Just two of you?
Mm-hmm.
Is there a chance that any of the workers might defect?
Barry would. That's why I spent some time trying to get a hold of him, and there was actually some time after all this hit the news and the whole thing went down, we got a call from Dennis, my supervisor, and he arranged a meeting at the Union Plaza Hotel. And when we got there, I brought 3 people with me, and I think he said he'd be in the casino area somewhere, and we went. I think Gene Huff came with me, and we went into the area. And walking down the corridor, I recognized one of the security personnel from there. And then when I finally found Dennis, he didn't even acknowledge my presence. We couldn't get his attention, and I left. So apparently, someone had known of the conversation and sent someone down there and made themselves obvious to Dennis, or something happened, and we left. But I think that was where Dennis really wanted to say something.
I understand that you used hypnotic regression to get at some of the details of your experience. If so, what is your impression of hypnotic regression as a tool?
It's probably reasonable because there are specifics. They contend that you can sit there and reread a document as if you had, as if you were there reading it for the first time. And what I was mainly interested in was in some of the schematics and drawings. And I did some of the hypnosis stuff with Lane Keck, a hypnotherapist in town, and I was certainly able to redraw a lot of the schematics and engineering drawings along those lines. And it's so as far as using it as a tool for that seems to work. For anything else, I don't know.
I have two things. One's a comment, the other one's a question. First of all, when I was 12 years old, I saw a daylight flying disc, which looked exactly like one of Billy Meyer's photographs 15 years later. And this just...
You mean earlier?
No, earlier, 15 years earlier, I saw this disc, and then Billy Meyer took a photo in 1975 of exactly the same disc that I saw, down to the last detail. It was the same. And then you said that the sport model looked a lot like this same photo in an interview with George Knapp. And I thought that was really interesting because it kind of tied it all together for me. And then I just wanted to make that comment. And then the question I had was, what was the year of your graduation from MIT, and did you get a PhD?
No, it's a master's degree.
Just a master's.
The year, what was the year of graduation? Probably 82, because I think I left there.
Went to Los Alamos?
I went to Los Alamos.
Thanks.
Can you talk about the mind control that some people have said was used on you when you decided to leave, and also the threats?
What mind control would that be?
Like someone made a comment that you might have been a victim of some sort of mind control, or
That came about by, when I was first brought there, they had a doctor, or nurse actually, in a medical setup there, and right after I had signed all the release papers, and my first time out there, I went in and they did what I perceived to be an allergen test, because they put a grid on my arm and different, pricked me with different chemicals, and it was their contention that, well, boy, there's a lot of strange elements here and unusual things you'll be working on, so they're trying to see if you're going to have any adverse reaction to them. And I was given something to drink. I said it smelled like pine, which it did. That's the best way I can describe it. And a lot of people jumped on that, saying, aha, well, that's the mind control substance. When you leave work, you're going to forget everything. When you come back, you can remember everything. But I think if anything, it was an anti-allergen drug or something along those lines.
how about the threats? Any kind of threats being used?
Yeah, there's plenty of threats.
Well, I mean, can you think of like bodily harm or the loss of pension, or what kind of stuff?
Well, the loss of pension and jail time, that was part of signing the paperwork. As far as bodily harm, after they caught us the time I brought out John Lear and a couple other people up there, then they threatened me, and they really didn't get much reaction out of that. Then they threatened my wife at the time, and they really threw out everything they could, without physically, attacking me.
Well, that's what I was wondering. And once they knew it was really you, not Dennis or someone else or anything, why didn't they just arrest you under charges of, violating the act?
Well, they can't arrest me because they'd have to admit, that this is classified material.
Well, you were talking about.
Yeah, they'd have to release it. Why didn't they, kill me?
Right.
That I really don't know. Maybe that had to do with how I got the job, or referencing the connection to Ed Teller or something along those lines. But I don't know.
Were there any contractor names, departments, divisions that were mentioned or signed on the wall or anything like that, referring to any companies or anything like that?
No, but I know EG&G had nothing to do with it. That's the only light I can shed on that, because I had mentioned that to him once, because that's where I was interviewed, at the EG&G building, and I thought that it was part of an EG&G project, and I think it was Dennis who said that, we don't let those people, anywhere near this place or anything. They were just a sore thumb to them.
Well, as one way of getting this information out, at the same time to have the government stop harassing you, did you ever consider bringing them to court?
On what charge?
Well, threatening you and your family, harassing you, and as a result of that, forcing them to...
With what evidence would I do that? I mean, it's hard enough to prove it to, the layman in general, but taking it to court, it's impossible. I mean, there's plenty of people that don't believe me anyway.
So you never sought out legal counsel with regard to any of this?
Well, a little, yeah, initially. And, the bottom line is, the attorney said there is absolutely nothing to go on. It's a total waste of time. And, if anything, it's going to be a public forum to discredit me in some manner. So, why even go through with it?
What about class action and ACLU and that sort of thing?
But still, you need, some sort of evidence that this happened. Even if I pulled out a piece of 115 and said, here, well, what does that have to do with anything, And there's nothing that... and what did they do to violate my rights that I didn't agree to at the beginning? Right. So they really had their bases covered.
It's pretty dirty what they did to you in Las Vegas there in 1990 in the summer. That was pretty dirty.
What was that?
They took you to court.
Well, yeah, that was my own fault.
So you've been through your counseling
Yeah.
by saying that, right?
How would someone get a piece of paper explaining the physical properties used in this mode of transportation?
The physical properties.
Or, I mean the the formulas used in the gravity.
You're being watched currently. Do you have any interaction with?
It's strange you should mention that. There's been nothing for probably these 4 years or 3 years, whatever it's been, but the other day, one of my phone lines has not been working and the other one was breaking up, so I called Centel down and they checked the house out and said there's nothing in the wiring here, and they called me down from Charleston Boulevard from the telephone pole, and they said my individual line was cut and that the other wires were stripped and twist tied together. So, of course, me being paranoid thinks, well, someone tapped in there, but I really can't think of another excuse as me being, just my single lines being played with. But that's what he said, and they filed a report on that, so that's one form of documentation.
You say your records at Caltech and MIT have somehow disappeared.
And Los Alamos and probably everywhere else.
Is there any way you could reconstruct your coursework and your professors?
Oh, sure. I've got people that that I went to school with, and George Knapp has spoken to some of them, and he even flew with me up to Los Alamos and spoke to my colleagues there, and it's just.
Could you reveal some of your professors at MIT and Caltech?
Yeah, if you want. I don't have a list of them here. Dr. Duxler, I think, was one of them, and Hosefield was another.
Hosefield?
Hosefield. Hoshsfield or something along those lines.
They remember you?
Oh yeah, Hosefield I know well.
These were at MIT or Caltech?
Hosefield was at MIT. Duxler was at Caltech.
Yeah, who's Barry?
Barry's a guy I worked with. Essentially worked on the buddy system there, and someone you have ideas to bounce off of, and Barry Castillo or Castile.
Was he there before you, or?
Yeah, a long time.
Still there, or?
He's probably still there.
Did you get any information from him?
Well, he essentially taught me everything that they had done up to date.
In the course of your work, did they ever mention any other facilities or installation around the country where associated work was being done?
No, they did mention, though, that this was the place that all of this stuff was brought to, and it was really purposely condensed here to keep an eye on everything and to have immediate access to everything that dealt with this, the alien technology.
Regarding the craft, the alien craft, were there any test personnel that crashed them? And if so, do you know about what the causes were?
I didn't read about any crashes during tests at all. So you'd think that there would be some, but I didn't.
When you were at Caltech, were you affiliated with any of the student houses?
No.
When I first heard of S4, it reminded me a lot of disk testing that I've heard of that goes on in Australia at Pine Gap. And I was wondering if you know anything about Pine Gap. Did you read anything about Pine Gap that you can tell us about?
I really don't keep abreast of the UFO information. As far as officially, I never read anything. I've heard the name Pine Gap mentioned, but I haven't heard anything about that.
Has anybody ever approached you with a screenplay offer?
Oh, God, yeah. Constantly.
Constantly? You ever considered it?
Yeah. The main problem, Columbia Pictures last year really wanted to do it, and they said we're making a screenplay, and my only problem is that if you guys are going to make a movie, it has to be exactly what happened and not the Hollywood version. I don't want to see Steven Seagal in it or anything.
I don't know too much about your experiential background or your expertise, but do you have any speculation why they recruited someone with a master's instead of a PhD? And
No, that's a really good question. I've always said there's plenty more people qualified than I am, and if there's any there's only two reasons they could have. Is either number one was that Dr. Teller essentially juiced me into the position that said, there's a guy, Lazar, I know him, find a place for him, or that the fact that I have traditionally approached everything from a very strange angle and essentially off the beaten path and tackling technical problems, and so it's only one of those two reasons, and unless there's a third one that I have no idea about.
Two things. Do you think they'll ever release this information? And if they don't, how do you think it'll ever come out? Besides people like, or will it be something like what you're doing?
Well, hopefully it's not this way. Hopefully there's going to be a release of information eventually, but whether or not they're going to say, hey, we've been keeping this secret for so long, it almost seems to me that they need a staged incident to get them off the hook. Take a flying saucer up in a C-130 and push it out the back and say, look, it crashed.
How would they overcome the G-forces in the rapid change of direction?
They don't apply once you've distorted. Distorting gravity, essentially having a gravity amplifier, distorts time and space, and those really don't apply. There's no interaction.
So there would be no effect on humans either?
No, there's no effect inside at all.
Bob, when you were working on the S4 project, did your education and whatever scientific vision that you have permit you to believe that at some point you'd be able to make a meaningful contribution to the program? And if so, after how much time approximately?
I was always in serious doubt whether or not they were going to get rid of me because there really wasn't anything that I could contribute. I wasn't an expert in any particular field that they were dealing with. So, I made some contributions as far as determining what element they were dealing with was, but...
that was significant, right?
Yeah, to some degree.
Yeah, I was just wondering, when you were at MIT and Caltech, I forgot if you had a master's degree or whatever, but did you come from a pretty, was your education pretty traditionally grounded as far as your own views, as far as physics and what is considered common knowledge, as opposed to theoretical things? And in other words, how surprised were you when they started showing you all this hardware and these concepts that could do things that really...
Oh, very. I was...
How long did it take you to start grasping that when you could really...
Even when I was reading the documentation, the alien question really never entered my mind. I kept pushing it off to, this group of scientists secretly came up with. I never, and I just had a mental block against that because I always thought flying saucers were totally ridiculous, and the people that really paid attention to such phenomena were just out in left field. They belong.
Thanks, Bob.
But it really made very little sense to me that anyone would deal with something like that. So I really held out to the very end, and until they finally said, "Well, Bob," that was it.
Well, at S4, did you ever hear any Air Force or military squadron numbers or names bandied about?
Yeah, I probably did, but I can't remember. I do remember someone talking about something along those lines. I don't think they were pilots, but they were someone related to the Air Force. I don't remember who, or they were talking about the Air Force, and I think they mentioned a squadron, and I don't know if that was what they called the group that flew the craft, or it was someone else, at Groom Lake. But I really don't know.
Are any nicknames or anything like that?
No, there really wasn't much, idle banter going on.
As far as like the gravitational field with these crafts and so forth, if you were to amplify it enough, could you enlarge the area that you wanted to take? In other words, could you move more than just the craft itself, say 2 crafts under the same power source and so forth? Or have you even ever considered something like that as feasible?
Oh, like a tractor beam?
It's possible, as long as they were both essentially in the field that was being emitted. I really don't know what, how the level of energy relates to the amount of mass that can be bent that way, or how the amount of space that can. Those numbers I really don't have, so it's just a guess.
Do you think it would be feasible?
What kind of control
Probably.
systems? What kind of control or instrument systems do they have?
I really don't know. That anything that I assume was control systems or instrumentation was up above, and I think that's where the navigation computation took place. And I dealt with only the power-hungry components, essentially.
When you were at S4, was there ever either a period within a day or even a couple of days where you, at this point, don't remember what you were doing during that time? And was there ever a period of time that you're not able to account for?
Yeah, I said that, and again, that's been taken and bent a lot of different ways too. There were times that I left, and it's because so much stuff I was exposed to, I was essentially drowned in information, and when I got back home, I really couldn't remember what day anything happened. But did I forget big chunks of knowledge? No, I just.
No, were there like periods of days where you haven't recalled what happened during those days? I mean, you
No.
were able to. And second, you probably don't want to get into this, but I really appreciate if you would. When you were walking either by the hallway or down, by the door with the window in it, and you looked through, do you go into that and describe what you did see? I mean, even if you're not sure, just state it as exactly as it was.
Well, this has to be taken in the right context too. First of all, being surrounded by the, flying saucers, knowing that the alien thing exists and all this technology. When I was walking down a hall to the, I don't remember where I was going anymore, but the different doors to the hangars are small 9-inch square windows with wire mesh running through them, and I looked in one as I walked by and was told to keep my head forward, and I saw the backs of two guys, and they were talking to a child, or I thought it was a small child, and of course when I told that to John Leary, he said that was an alien, there's no doubt. And I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was a small guy, but it just looked weird and it was a glance. So do I think it was an alien? No.
Did you see the quote small guy? Did you see the small guy, or you only saw the two guys looking downward?
No, I saw the small guy.
You saw the small guy that they were talking to.
Yeah.
What did it?
It was just a glance. I have no idea. That's why I said, but believe me, if it had a rounded head and big eyes, I'd say, hey, there's an alien there. But I can't say that.
But it was a small.
It was something.
A small person or someone they were talking
to. See, I don't think anyone could bring their kids down there, so I don't know. But for that matter, they could have been holding up.
I feel like you're talking to a crowd that has a lot of personal experience, a lot of these people.
Right, but also look at it from a technical viewpoint. That it could be a model, a life-size model, and they were trying to see how the size relationship works in the seats and other parts of the craft, and what's accessible. So it doesn't necessarily mean that it was a living being.
Thank you.
Would you mind speaking at all about how this body of knowledge has affected you emotionally or maybe spiritually? Are you frightened by the implications of what all this means, or
no?
You've no doubt thought about the overall agenda. You've speculated, I'm sure, on your own.
Yeah, but it's difficult to really, put a finger on it. Since there's so little evidence to go on, and really 99% of the stuff that I hear, I really don't even come close to believing at all. And it's not just because I'm skeptical, it's because it's absolutely ridiculous. I even, though it's stepping on a lot of people's toes, I think 99% of the sightings out here are absolutely not flying saucers. Most people are watching 737s come into Groom Lake, and they may turn up there, and there's lights on the planes. And along the other same lines, there's these parachuted flares that they fire off near the Papoose Lake area, and they're an orange color, which is pretty coincidental, and they're on essentially a modified small hot air balloon, so the burning heat of the flare keeps it afloat longer. And whether they're doing that for disinformation or practicing how missiles lock onto, heat-seeking targets, I don't know, but I think 99% of that stuff is what, people, that come around this area are saying.
It seems as if even knowing that we possess alien technology hasn't even made you a believer.
That's probably true. But it has. I believe the stuff that I worked on, there's absolutely no question in my mind. But I think everyone can only go so far, and I just hate to speculate because I hate to be wrong. I don't want to say, well, they had to be given to us because there's we didn't shoot them down, and it's so I just stop right there.
I think we forget sometimes you're a scientist.
Maybe so. I stop with what I'm pretty sure with him, and that's it.
What is your synopsis in a nutshell? Based upon what you saw and what you experienced.
Well, I can't. Like I said, I stopped before that. You know, I have lots of possible ideas in my mind, but
Based only on what your experience was, only on what you saw, what is your synopsis?
my synopsis of what I know to be true,
Yes.
that the government is holding 9 alien spacecraft that are propelled by a modified gravity generator. The work is being conducted 15 miles south of Green Lake at that isolation designated as S4 that operate, and that's about it.
Okay, thank you.
What did your
Bob, did you ever see the...
environment smell like? Was there any unusual odors from the craft or anywhere else?
No, not at all.
Did you ever see the word S4 written anywhere? The letters S4.
That's a good question. Did I ever see S4 written anywhere?
What was it? What was the question?
The question is, did he ever see S4 written anywhere?
On your badge.
On your badge?
Yeah, the S4 was punched out on the badge.
Punched out, so you never saw it.
It was more along the lines of I was thinking was a sign, and I think, because it's hard to see, I think near, when you approach the Papoose mountain range, that there is a sign that designates it as S4, but if I'm pretty sure I saw a sign there because I can only see out the front window when I'm going through there, and I'm really not sure what it said, but since most other signs designated it said area or tech area or something along those lines, that might have been S4 because that's what you're referring to.
So you just heard it orally, S4 orally, and that's how you know to designate that.
Well, yeah, and as someone else mentioned on the badge, that was star punched out there. But as far as an actual sign to the area, I didn't see it in any other writing.
So did you ever see it on the badge? Since it was punched out, you wouldn't see it.
Well, it really says it directly above it. I mean, the star punch.
Oh, so how was it written? S4?
S-4.
Oh, a dash. There's a hyphen in there?
Yeah.
Oh. Because Bill Moore's making a big thing. I says, how do you write it? He's talking to George Knapp, trying to debunk the whole thing. How do you write S4? You know?
Does it make a difference?
Right.
Well, that's what you call picking nits.
Yeah.
Well, I know there's a lot of people that don't believe the story, altogether, but it's difficult. There's really a limit to what else could I possibly do, to show people what happened, other than relay some of the information and things along those lines. But
What kind of work are you doing now?
a variety of things. I mean, everything from I have 3 separate companies. One is deals with commercial photo processing. The other one is developing and repairing alpha radiation detectors for radiation off of plutonium, which unfortunately that's going down the tubes because they stopped the testing out here. And I do computer graphics, a lot of that, and actually music videos, believe it or not.
Are you still building and racing jet cars?
Well, I don't do it for money anymore. Now I just take the jet car out and run it around. But I kind of got scared when I originally started racing jet cars. There were like 25 people or something along those lines that were licensed to drive, and now there's like 7. And the guy, when I stopped racing, the guy that trained me crashed. So everyone else is dead. So I don't race anymore.
Do you still have the Lamborghini?
The body's sitting in the backyard. The car I take out once every couple of weeks to the dry lake and play around.
2 questions. Do you have any idea how they achieve that proton source as a steady stream in such a small reactor?
It could be a radioactive element. I mean, you could use... a proton source could certainly be... they could be using alpha particles, for that matter, which is essentially a helium nuclei. And there's lots of elements that can do that.
The other part is, in the video we saw, the badge had the letters, in capital letters, MAJ written turnover side. Was that actually on your badge?
Yeah, that was really on there. And I was told Majestic was the level of clearance that was cleared for. That makes you wonder about Bill Moore's thing at the MJ12 documents and all that. Or is that actual, or considering that these guys had made posters that they're here and things like that, they could have taken Majestic and made it the name of it just as kind of a tongue-in-cheek thing, or was that actual evidence that Majestic 12 actually existed and all that? So.
What about your other associates? Did their badge look identical to the one we saw? Or were
Pretty much so, except Dennis's looked different, and for the most part they had different areas punched in them.
At one time, you said that you thought that, the scientific community should be the ones in charge, or, in charge of the research of this and everything. What name would you put out? Who do you think would be qualified enough to head a group like that, as far as being able to decipher what's going on, and stuff like that? Do you have any names you could throw out?
Yeah, they're friends, essentially, that I've worked with before, but I know what their expertise is in.
As far as actual qualifications go and so forth like that, and do you think that the names you come up with, they get along well enough to be able to...
Well, one of them was Joe Benedetti, a guy that I worked with in Los Alamos, one of my colleagues, and I was trying to force his resume on them. And, they did take it and look at it, and I was kind of hoping that he would be a big boon to the project, but, I'd already left by the time, they would have had to look at it.
Concerning local sightings here, I've personally seen 2 at one time maneuvering, and along with a third one later, and they looked and performed exactly like your video that you took that night that was broadcast.
Now, I'm not attacking anyone that's had sightings, but there are there's a lot of atmospheric phenomena that can relate to. I'm beginning to sound like Phil Klass here, but, but I mean, just to give.
Live in glass house.
But I mean, just to give it a fair shake. In fact, what's that guy's name? Glenn Campbell wrote that Area 51 guide and brought up, I don't think he believes my story, but I think he brought up some very good points in there, and that a lot of that stuff can be mistaken. And if you're looking at something with the naked eye, a lot of times it can look like it jumps around and things like that, especially if you're staring at it for a long time. It all depends how it's like that. Obviously, if it's something dramatic, if something is close, if something makes a tremendous jump, a great distance, other than a little, tiny white light that looks like the head of a pin, that's a different story. And if that's what you saw, then that remains unexplained.
Well, that's what I'm referring to, because it was very close. Both of them were very close, and they would get brighter and darker, just like your video. Sometimes almost strobed, and they were down on the ground, got bright, took off, and moved around. And my main question I was going to ask is that not all of the time the light was on. It seemed like when they were getting ready to take off, they'd power up, get very bright, and take off. But when they were moving around, they could shut the light completely off.
Now, they can't shut them off. What happened is the craft probably pitched with the bottom towards you, and it looked like the light was off, because you can't see the light from the bottom.
I see, thanks.
2 questions. One is nuts and bolts, but why do they generate light? Why do you see any light at all?
Well, to just answer that one first is that's essentially operating like a fluorescent tube. Anywhere you have, you can take a powerful radio transmitter and you take a neon tube and you bring it near it, it's going to light up just because the atoms are getting excited. And
it's certainly ionization of the surrounding air?
Right. The electrons go to a high energy state, they drop down and release a photon, and that's what's going on.
Okay, and secondly, just to change the venue and force you to speculate, now that you had some time to think back on some things, do you want to elaborate any more on your ideas of what containers are and why we are referred to containers as containers?
I can't even guess. All I can say is exactly the way it was written, and because as soon as I speculate on something, people are going to lean towards that way, and that's not fair.
Did those documents at all ascribe a purpose to why these genetic manipulations are being done?
No. This was not a large briefing. I had 90% of the material that I read was dealing with my project, and when I mean briefings, I mean 2 sheets of paper as just the information I got on whatever else was going on, probably to alleviate my curiosity, and that was about it.
What do you know about the aurora? Is there anything about the aurora that you might attribute to as a UFO?
Now, the aurora I did see once on the way out there, and the only reason I say it's the aurora is I was told it by Dennis in the bus, and makes an unbelievably loud sound, and I think when I heard it, I said, it sounds like the sky is tearing. And from what I understand, it operates on liquid methane powered engine. There's a lot of this information has gotten out in Aviation Week and Popular Science, and it looked, if this in fact was Aurora, it was certainly a strange aircraft. It looked like, if you know what the old X-15 looked like, a very long, slender craft with short wings on it, and a square exhaust that had little vanes in it.
Is it quite large?
Is it large?
Large, yeah.
Yes, it's quite large. It's a really overgrown thing. And there were a couple of people that came up who I described the sound to. One of them was John Andrews from the Testers Model Corporation, and they're always spying around to make the most recent models of the Stealth and things like that. And he heard the exact sound that I described. Unfortunately, he couldn't record it, but that really got him lit up. And, he probably has more information about it than I do.
Yeah. Okay, quick. When you listen to some abduction reports, whether or not people believe it or not, there seems to be a common thread of people being moved by blue beams of light. Did you ever talk to anybody in your work about technology that could explain that, or is there extrapolation of propulsion systems that you work on, principles that could explain something like that?
Any of the 3 gravity amplifiers could do that, could lift something off the ground, or for that matter, compact it into the ground. That's not a problem. And because the craft, in fact, can operate on one amplifier in Omicron mode, hovering, that would leave the other 2 amplifiers free to do anything. So I imagine they could pick up cows or whatever else they want to do. But you know, on the craft that I worked on, there was absolutely no provision for anything to come in through the bottom of the craft or anything along those lines. So I don't know how, if that in fact does happen, it's in a completely different type of craft.
Does a blue sound, is a blue color consistent with what you would expect?
That's more consistent than the graph's glowing orange, because you know the interaction with the it should the nitrogen atmosphere glow blue.
Did the ship appear to be cast at one piece of metal?
Not cast, and well, at least more it was injection molded, because there was no sharp objects, even where the seats meet. The floor is curved, the top of everything. I think the analogy I gave, it looked like it was completely made of wax and heated till it melted, and then cooled down. Everything is completely, perfectly rounded, and if in fact you're talking about something that's containing a high voltage field, that's exactly what you want to have to prevent the corona discharge from spraying off.
How can you focus a gravity wave on something that's so many millions and millions of miles away?
Well, first of all, I don't think they focus it that far away. Like I was talking to with someone else, I think these trips are made in several small jumps, because the amount of energy required to do something like that, and it's not really that, not the amount of energy, but if you're looking at 3 amplifiers that focus down to something the size of a tennis ball, that the amount of precision that's required to move the amplifier with minimal deviation out there eventually is going to exceed anyone's level of technology. So if you're doing a jump of 1,000 miles, I mean, that's tremendously impressive. If you're doing a jump, I can't see them jumping a light year, much less 30. It just doesn't seem possible.
Do you have knowledge of, or can you speculate on what these small silver round appearing looking balls are that seem to be associated with crafts?
I never heard of them.
In the video surrounding UFOs in Mexico City during the eclipse, there's some very remarkable video of a pulsation of some sort of field surrounding these UFOs. Would that be an attribute? Would that be attributable to the type of technology that you saw?
It's possible. An optical distortion?
Yeah, absolutely. So a pulse, and the polarization of the pulse seems to be changing as well.
That's certainly possible.
Yeah, in your video that you were, that I saw last night, you were mentioning in what your readings that the aliens had a capability of anesthetizing a human brain, and that could be broken by either rock music or stimulus.
Rock music. I think did I actually say that in the tape?
Yeah.
Loud music. Okay. Yeah, apparently, whatever I don't know what else to call it other than some sort of anesthetizing hypnosis along those lines. But anything that distracts attention at a high level, and certainly some sort of stimulant drug or something that gets someone riled up would not permit that to happen. It's just like in modern hypnosis, or not really modern hypnosis, but in hypnosis in general, if you're not in a relaxed state, you're not going to get into that level of consciousness. So, if you're in a very alert, awake state, it's going to be hard to, cause that effect if in fact that is correct information.
What context was that information in?
That dealt with some of the biological effects of the aliens on. I think essentially on the human race is what it was, is how it was termed. This was I think it was in part of the autopsy reports because they had the single organ they had in their body cross-sectioned and split up, and I think there was a comments in there about what different functions of the brains are, and I think that's where this came up, is they were trying to relate some unknown lobe of the brain to this function, but that's so typical. There again, like in particle physics, we don't know what it is, so hey, that's what does it. It's not necessarily true.
Yes, I hope you won't be offended by this question, because I have to ask it to verify your bona fides. Have you ever gone by any other name?
Have I ever gone by any other name? No.
You've been Bob Lazar from birth.
As far as I know.
Mr. Lazar.
Yeah.
Do you have any other biological information on the aliens besides that they had one organ?
No, that's all I have, and that was essentially just from looking at a photograph.
So we don't know if they eat or drink or...
They probably do, but I don't.
This is really just a comment because you mentioned how you feel about Billy Meyer, that whole scene, but you said that the craft that you worked on looks just like the craft that from the Billy Meyer case.
One of them, yeah.
However, the beings that Billy Meyer supposedly was in contact with are supposedly full-size, like average human beings. And you said that the craft you worked on had chairs that a full person could not sit on.
But if you looked at the Billy Myers information, I think somewhere in there, maybe I've got this wrong because so much stuff has gone through my head, that the people, the large people that apparently flew that craft, did not produce the craft. They think Billy Myers said it was obtained from creatures that were 2 meters tall or 1 meter tall or something along those lines.
Which craft was that? The craft that
That Billy Myers.
The case of Billy Meyer?
Yeah.
Well, they claim that they were operating the craft during those contacts.
Well, so were our guys, for that matter. So I imagine they could be retrofitted, but I don't know. I can't go either way. I know the one that I worked on was small and was certainly uncomfortable for anything in the area of 5 to 6 feet to walk around in.
Were the other 8 crafts of the same aliens? And where did we get that?
I don't know. That's information that wasn't given to me. But I think as I said on my tape in an interview somewhere, one of them absolutely had a projectile hole through it. And the only thing, I don't believe it was shot down. This is a personal belief. But more along the lines, I believe it was stood up on its side just to see how the metal would react to a high-speed projectile going through it.
You were there for what, 4 to 6 months?
Yeah.
You had a lot of contact with security, obviously.
Yeah, too much.
Too much. Regular escort, a sane person. How did they act?
It depends. Each one
you ever
goes.
talk to them?
No, I never talked to them. I can't stand them. They only went so far. If I was in the lab area and I went to the bathroom, the guy that came with me, or that was by the door, went to the bathroom. He would go so far, and if I was leaving the perimeter, there would be another guy that went from that distance on.
Was he armed?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Was he Army, Air Force? Can you tell?
I don't know.
Any insignias on his uniform?
No, he might have been, like I said, they had a dark blue uniform, most of the guys there, except a few of the people outside had that desert camo.
Headgear, beret, cap?
No, they didn't have any hats on.
There wasn't any insignia or anything on them, they just had the pistol and that was it?
Boy, there might have been, but You know, at the time, I probably didn't pay much attention to it. I was trying to put the guy out of my mind, not study.
They never wanted to talk to you. Did they all seem like a stern Delta Force type, or were they like...
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they weren't the least bit interested in what was going on. And, you know, what they've been briefed on, I have no idea. But you know, to them, it seemed like we were a nuisance. But, you know, it's the reason that they're there, so I don't know really.
Did you ever see any inside hardware of this machine? The nuts and bolts, wires? And obviously, you probably did. Did it look like our nuts and bolts and wires we get in a hardware store, or what?
Well, as far as fastening devices, everything was formed together. There were no nuts and bolts. Wires, there were no connecting wires, even between electrical systems.
So what was the course of energy? How did it go from one area to another area?
The best guess is essentially it operated like a Tesla coil does. It's a transmitter and essentially a receiver tuned to the transmitting frequency and receives the electrical power. And, you know, there again, that's not real advanced technology. Tesla did that in the 30s, I think.
Lights on a console with a plastic?
No, no lights. There were no lights.
Was the craft monolithic in construction then?
Excuse me, I didn't hear.
Was the craft monolithic in construction?
Yes.
Could you recount for us in detail your memory of what happened the night that you and the group of people were discovered on the perimeter of the viewing area when you saw the craft?
I bet John Laird tell a different story.
No, it just it was compelling, and I just would be curious to hear your point. In particular, there was one aspect of the story. He said, evidently, when they were the vehicles with some 10 unmarked Broncos were.
How many?
He said 5 on each side of the road. 10.
Must have been a different time. No.
He said you either jumped from the car or left the occupants of the car to go out into the desert so that you wouldn't be discovered amongst the people there, and that you returned home.
That's true. Yeah. Okay. What really happened?
Tell us all.
We drove out. Well, I mean, John Lear's a nice guy, and I like him, but you know, he does have a tendency to add about 15% color to stories, and if a story goes through them twice, it's 30%. But what happened that night is we took a Jean, my wife at the time, and her sister were going to go out and see what we could see because it was a test flight coming up. And John knew that we were up to something because we didn't invite him in, and he showed up at the house and said, okay, you know, well, we're going, and, you know, come on. We had rented a car because the only reason we rented a car was because, you know, sister-in-law was in from out of town. All I've ever owned usually is sports cars. They seat 2 people, and that's all we had. So we had rented a car, and we all piled into that. And we drove out there. I don't remember what time we got there at. But it got dark. We waited right till dusk to drive up the road. And we got probably about 7 miles in, I think. And we were very careful not to hit the brakes because we didn't want the lights going on, because we knew there, by watching up on the road beforehand, we knew there were security guys running around just looking.
Is this a mailbox road?
No, I've never been on Mailbox Road. It's the Broom Road, that, you know, big one that goes up there. Well, it's probably on Mailbox Road, but I didn't watch anything from that. We drove in probably about 5 to 7 miles, and we brought all kinds of stuff with us. We brought Geiger counters, we brought a Celestron 10-inch telescope. I brought a 9mm pistol because I really didn't want to get caught. And we came up there, and as we stopped the car, my sister-in-law was driving. She stepped on the brakes. And so we stopped right there and just waited. We didn't see any reaction. And then somebody opened the door and the dome light went on. And as soon as that happened, 2 different sets of headlights lit up on either side of us. And we said, that's it, we're dead. So I went in the truck and I got my pistol and I went out to the desert.
They were far enough away.
Oh no, what happened? No, I got that wrong. We hopped in the car and then started really hauling ass back to the exit. Thinking if we could get to the road in time, you know, we're out of their jurisdiction, there's no problem.
Yeah.
So we got about halfway up there, and I think there were 3 vehicles maximum. I stopped, and we had figured we're not getting out of there because as we're getting close to the top of the road, you can see another vehicle pull in. I said, well, we're trapped. So I got off and ran out to the desert. Now the rest of the story is from the people that were there because I was out in the desert laying down on the ground. Supposedly what happened was these guys came out. John set up the telescope real fast. And that was the best excuse he could come up with.
That's right.
And the guys came over and said, I think John interrupted him and say, hey, what are you guys trying to do, a drug deal or something? Did we interrupt something? And they kind of just shrugged that off. And John said, well, we're looking at Jupiter. And they said, what are you guys doing out here? They just ignored whatever he had to say and went on for a while. I don't remember the conversation because I wasn't there, but now it was pitch black. You couldn't see your hand in front of your face. It was a moonless night, and they said, all right, we'll just get the hell out of here. They backed off down the road, and they stopped, but we didn't know that, and turned around.
You can see all this happening, right?
No, my head was down. I didn't want my glasses or my white face shining. So
a few hundred yards away.
A few hundred yards away, they had stopped. No one knew this at the time, and I came back, out of the desert, and I'm usually very sarcastic and joke around, and what I said was when Gene Huff was standing there, I said, man, we're lucky those guys didn't see the other 50 Delta Force we had out there, or something along those lines, they could have taken him out at any time, and he laughed, it was just, I don't remember the exact content of the joke, but those guys heard that, and they're sitting there watching us, so I guess, now I learned about most of this from the debriefing afterwards when they took me in, so the guys that were there were on top of the truck or Jeep they had, and they went to arms because they thought there were guys standing out there. So they had us all under gunpoint. We didn't know what was going on. And we're sitting there talking about everything that had happened, flying saucers and all that stuff, sitting on the bumper, and we're just looking off down the road. And we'd see a little green light drop on the ground and roll around, and it was a night vision scope. And so it picks it up and it disappears, and we all said, well, let's get the hell out of here.
What's that? What happened?
So one of the guards had dropped a night vision scope, and it rolled on the ground, and we could see the little green image rolling around, and you see it pick up and disappear. And it was only like from here to the the netting over there. That was the distance because it was completely dark.
Wow.
And so we got scared, and as soon as we got in the car, we all agreed, they're right there, and they heard everything. So we took off, and we got to the top of the road, and the Lincoln County Sheriff was there, and that was another major hassle. So he wanted to search the car, we wouldn't let him, and he was in radio contact with the base or these guys out there, and they said, where did the extra guy come from? And that completely confused him because they had never seen me come up or something like that. They thought I was another guy that walked around however. Anyway, the big problem was that there was another guy, and I think legally they can only hold you there for an hour, and we were there for like 59 minutes, and he said, okay, go, but he really wanted to search. Well, I got to backtrack a bit. John Layer made the colossal mistake. We were under just minimal suspicion at the time, and he asked for everyone's ID. And in the trunk, we had everything, the Geiger counters and all that stuff, and the people that didn't want to show their ID said, well, we don't have it, we left it at home, and the other ones that did, took it out. And John said, wait, mine's in the trunk, and he opens the trunk, and here's all the stuff laying there, and that's when the cop decided to keep us for a long time. We've always hassled John about that forever. And he said, so you guys are out here with a Geiger counter, a telescope, and all this other hardware, sound equipment, and video stuff, and you're just out walking around, and we all said, yeah, and so that's when he kept us, and that's really what happened that day. And the following day was a work day for me, but I was taken into debriefing and yelled at for a long time.
Never allowed to return to the S4 after that time.
Right. Well, that was kind of a turning point.
Were you fired then? Were you officially fired?
No, I was never fired. See, at the time they were going to pull my clearance before that. So I don't know if that was ever clear. The main reason was for me not progressing any further there was they halted my clearance because at the time my phone was being tapped, and I allowed that. I signed the order to do that, and I'm going through my background, and at the time I didn't tell my wife what was going on until later, and as things progressed. But she was having an affair with somebody on the phone line, and it was her flight instructor that I was paying for flying lessons, by the way. But as this was going on, just like in the astronaut program, not only do you have to have security as far as no connection to foreign governments or things like that, but as far as your family life, it has to be stable because they don't want any, loose cannons running around. So this was going on. I had no knowledge of it. And they said, well, what they were going to do is not say anything to me and wait until one way or another the situation resolved itself. Either, my wife took off or, came to an end or whatever. So when I was in debriefing essentially that day, this is when they really started attacking me and hassling me, and that's when they took out the phone transcripts and, hey, by the way, Bob, your wife's fucking somebody, and that was the last time I went back. So that was a real fun time.
Another profound meeting.
Yeah.
In a variety of ways.
So that was...
must have been just pretty bowled over.
Yeah.
Did you see stuff out at S4 that you've chosen not to talk about?
Did I see stuff at S4?
Yeah, is there more going on that basically you've decided not to?
Yeah, but not that really changes anything. It's the same thing. It's just little technical things that, it's really not worth bringing up.
Yeah, real quick, did you see the paperwork and how they got the disc to start with?
No. It's pure speculation.
What did you have the Geiger counters for, and do you believe that, are there dangerous levels of radiation in this area because of testing they did previous to this point?
I think we wanted to see the background level, and I don't remember. It was just like a staple to take along with it, Just
I understand that this area tests high for radioactivity. The background levels are high in this area. Is that true? Do you know?
I don't know. We had the Geiger counter, but before I got to measure the background, I don't know what it was.
Bob, this might be important because Jacques Vallée is such stature, and he's trying to debunk you on the basis of supposedly he's telling your report is only that you saw a DVM and an oscilloscope at S4.
As far as the equipment there?
Yeah.
This is another thing that's gotten so twisted. Jacques Vallée, who's a UFO writer of some sort, came to see me in Las Vegas. I don't remember how long ago it was, but after the George Knapp thing, and he came down with some producers from Universal Studios who was going to make a movie about his book Intruders, or not Intruders, that's someone else, Dimensions or something. Anyway, they came down with him and they said, well, we want to know what you think of this, and just give us your opinion if this jives. And I looked at the information and he explained it to me, and I said that has nothing to do with the craft that I worked on or any of the technology that I was involved in, period. And Jacques really didn't appreciate that, but they asked for my opinion. So I said, and as far as the conclusions he's drawn, I don't agree with them. I think they're completely wrong, and so on and so forth. So he really didn't like me after that point. So he began to interview me, and he said, well, what did you do here and here? And I went over things, and there's one, and this is on tape. I don't see why he would even make a fuss about it, but he said, well, what kind of equipment did you have to work with? And I said, a wide variety of, of different things. And he said, well, what about your bench? What was on your bench? I said, anything you'd find in a normal tech bench. I said, oscilloscopes, DVMs, things like that. And he said, okay. And then, later I heard through the grapevine that he's out doing a lecture. And Bob Lazar said he's back engineered the flying saucers with an oscilloscope and a DVM. And, and this is it was on tape. And I think a lot of he's really pretty pissed at me for shooting down the movie, but I had no idea that was going to be the effect, or else I would have reserved my opinion, But it's just the way it goes.
What was the physical layout of the compound where you worked at like? Could you describe it?
It was long. It was about up on the side of the mountain range there, where all the hangar doors went alongside, and then there's a long corridor that goes down in back of the hangars. Off that corridor comes several rooms, only 2 or 3 of which I've been in, the medical area, the lab that I work in, and then there's a small little room where I read some briefings and things along those lines. But I haven't been in any of the other rooms or know if there are things behind it or underneath it. So that's all I can help you with on that.
Last night, John Lear said that you really didn't believe that there was anything unusual going on in those space shuttle shots. You thought it was ice particles, these ones they've been claiming are
the STS-48.
Oh, yeah.
Could you
That's
give
not
us-
ice, it's dust.
Or dust, whatever.
There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. You know, that's.
Have you seen the Hoagland
Yeah.
analysis?
Yeah, I've seen the whole thing. I've seen a copy from NASA, and it's, you know, unfortunately, it would be neat if they were flying saucers. But if you see a bright white flash first, that's the positioning thruster firing on the
But the
left side of the
attitude
shuttle.
of the shuttle didn't change, right?
No, it doesn't. It normally doesn't do that. You know, those are station-keeping thrusters, and that it all depends. If the thruster is firing in the direction of the shuttle, keeping its forward momentum, there'll be no attitude change. That's only if you're firing a pitch rocket will you see a change like that. And the fact that it flew forward means it was firing in the direction of the shuttle. So those little dots and things you see, I mean, I firmly believe, because I've seen other things along those lines, are right on the lens. They're not on the horizon. That's why you see a flash, there's a delay, and then particles that are normally floating in space, you see dart off like that because of the delay time from that. And, you know, until I see something else that leads me to believe that, I know it looked neat, you know, like there was a flash and something came up from the ground, but if you just watch that and think that these are right against the lens, and that bright flash is one of the thrusters firing, that, you know, you'll probably have a different opinion of it.
But what about the right angle move? It's a 45-degree turn, which means it has to stop.
Right, but you're talking about little dust particles that are moving, and then when the thruster fired, you know, it doesn't. There's no mass to them in the reverse
Plus, there
direction.
are other particles in the video that do the exact same thing. They're all
Yeah, if you look at the whole video and not just the crop down, there's all kinds of junk floating around, and when that thruster fires, there's about a 1 second delay, and everything goes flying off exactly like you'd expect.
Everything goes flying off and drifting except for one item that accelerates at like 10 times the speed of all the other items in the video.
Yeah, but there's
Have you seen Hoagland's detailed breakdown?
yeah.
Okay, what about when he's talking about the light coming over the horizon of the planet, under the layer, I forget what he calls
Under
the
the
layer,
exosphere.
and over the ionosphere, but over the horizon?
Yeah, but that doesn't. It still doesn't make sense. It doesn't take into account that something is right on the camera lens.
Did the tape that you listened to, did it have the last transmission from Mission Control? Did they have the
I
audio?
really don't. I don't remember. No, I'm not standing on this like this is absolute fact, but from what I've seen,
Most of the tapes have had that edited off. The last thing you said, heads up rat gun, which means pay attention and keep your mouth shut.
I don't know. I mean, that's my opinion, and I haven't seen anything to veer me from it. But you know, I always remain open-minded. But I don't know. That's all I can say.
You mentioned the photon earlier. Do you think physics is taking a wrong turn by looking for exchange particles when you're talking about the strong force or gravity there? I'm not clear on why you're skeptical about the gravity.
About the graviton?
Yeah, and every other force seems to have an exchange particle connected with it.
No, not necessarily. I mean, they make it have one, but you know, as time goes on, that really hasn't held true. And you know, the bottom line is they don't. Well, first of all, they don't even believe there's a graviton anymore, so I'm not the only one. As far as exchange particles, you know, still, though some of them, like the zeta particle, maybe that's an actual thing. But you know, when they're looking at transfers of energy, I think these are scapegoats, you know, for the most part. And you know, a lot of the experiments that I was doing in Los Alamos essentially was along these same lines. But you know, other exchange particles like the intermediate vector boson, you know, I don't believe that thing exists. I really don't. I think they're grabbing at straws and just coming up with excuses.
Did you use or see any kind of drawing, mechanical drawing or electrical schematics? Or
Oh, sure.
Any kind of documentation,
Yeah.
special which we don't know?
Of what we knew of the amplifier and engineering layouts and things along those lines, and I've duplicated those at home.
Saucer travel characteristics in Earth's gravity well and in the zero gravity?
Is there a difference in?
I mean, the ability for long distance travel, how is it affected by zero gravity?
Well, zero gravity is ideally what it wants. I don't think it wants in any other interactive gravity field.
But it would be much harder to control though in zero gravity.
No, not really.
But as far as you know, there's never been any tests.
No tests out of the atmosphere, you know, as of 1989 when I left.
Since it is controlling gravity, would it be possible that these things could either make themselves entirely invisible or a field of invisibility by bending the light around the outside of the ship?
Yeah, that's a byproduct of what's going on because, just as any large source of gravity bends light, and you get an intense focus source like that, and it's going to really distort it.
Do I understand correctly that you just said that you duplicated the gravity amplifiers?
Some of the equipment and most of the drawings, yeah.
And when you say duplicated, you mean you tested it to see if it worked?
No, not tested it because I don't have the facilities to do that. But like I mentioned to someone else earlier, that this summer I'll be patenting those drawings and that device itself. So should anyone decide that all of a sudden they discovered it, and since they've made no claim to it, I'll have the patent.
Wait a minute, you don't know about this? Come on. That's really part of the Federation, the intergalactic patent treaty. Don't you know about that?
No, I didn't sign that, so it doesn't
That's
count.
right. I'll try some ice water.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, you're talking about gravity amplifiers. How do you build a gravity wave detector so you can determine the frequency and the source direction of a gravity wave emanating from a planet or other source?
Well, actually, a gravity wave detector is a tough thing to make, and they are being made, and I don't exactly follow what they're doing, but I know the basis of what it is. It's a giant drum. It's 20 or 30 feet long, and it's filled with dry cleaning fluid with carbon tetrachloride in there, and it rotates. And I never paid much attention to it. I have no idea how that detects a gravity wave, but I think Caltech has even funded one of them.
Well, I mean the gravity waves that you're talking about.
Well, gravity waves are gravity waves.
What about the smaller gravity wave, gravity A? How do you detect that? What is the frequency of that?
The frequency that the actual reactor operates at is like 7.46 hertz. It's a very low frequency.
And that's the frequency of Earth's gravity or universally all gravity?
That's the frequency that the reactor operates at.
Did you use any computer process in the control process? Or?
In the control process? No, I wasn't affiliated with that.
Why would you suppose that the government would continue to spend these massive billions of dollars on space projects that are extended, 20 years into the future, when it knows it has this technology that would make them all obsolete tomorrow?
Repeat the question.
Oh, he wants to know why the government would continue to spend millions and billions, I guess, of dollars on space projects when they have this technology. And well, first of all, you're assuming that the whole one of the government knows what's going on, and that's probably not the case. NASA probably isn't aware of what's going on here. Second of all, just because they have this stuff, they haven't left the Earth with it, and they won't. So we still want to send things up in orbit, and that's the most efficient way we have of doing it is essentially building a big firework to go up there.
But if they spent the same money in developing this technology, or half of it, they'd probably be able to.
Not necessarily. Sometimes all the money in the world doesn't get you anywhere. Though it helps. And of course, if you want to keep something secret, that's out of the question. But putting that aside, just dumping billions and billions of dollars into it, sure, you're going to make big strides and you get real reasonable people to work on the thing, but you're still going to get stuck around the area of where you don't have the proper materials or the techniques required to manufacture these things, and that's where you'll get stuck.
If your patents or when your patents get approved, what do you plan on doing at that point?
Nothing. Just paying the yearly fee to them and leave them alone.
Can you comment on your degree thing a little further? What happened?
They really didn't go into much. It was they wanted to know what we were doing out there, and they went into, well, we reviewed this was secret. When we said it was secret, we didn't mean bring your friends here and things along those lines. They flown in. And it was my impression that they didn't know what was behind the mountain. what we were watching. They were just told to guard what was going on. At a point of bringing up the flying saucers and things of that sort, and that's when they threatened me. That's when they mentioned the thing about my wife, and they were really pissed about that. And then they